I walked in on the most devastating sight. My wife, with my own brother, caught in a moment of betrayal. The shock hit me like a freight train, but what followed was even worse. My entire family turned against me, and I found myself completely alone in the midst of a storm I never saw coming. How did it all spiral out of control? Let me take you through the heart-wrenching truth of what happened next. This isn't just a story of a cheating wife. It's about the unimaginable betrayal that shattered my entire family. When you love someone with all your heart, you believe there's no way they could betray you. But that's exactly what my wife did, right in front of me with the one person I trusted the most, my brother. Felt like the ground slipped beneath me, and the worst part? The people I thought would stand by me, my own family, sided with them. What happens when your world is torn apart, and the very people you rely on turn their backs on you? It all began like any other love story, a fairy tale, or so I thought. My wife and I had built something beautiful over the years, something most people only dream of. We had the kind of bond that seemed unbreakable, an unspoken connection that made the world feel like it was just the two of us. We were a team, partners in every sense. There were no signs that anything was wrong, not at first. We laughed together, planned our future, shared our dreams. I trusted her completely, with my heart, my soul, and even my vulnerabilities. I never once suspected that she could betray me, especially not with my own brother. Our relationship was the kind of love people envied. We had each other's backs through thick and thin. We talked about growing old together, about our kids, and what we'd do when we finally had the time to travel. Every milestone, every celebration, every little moment felt like it brought us closer. I thought this was it. This was the perfect relationship, and I believed it with all my heart. But as time went on, small things began to catch my attention. Little cracks in the facade that I brushed off, convincing myself they were just part of life. Just stress, or maybe the everyday chaos everyone faces. Late nights at work became a regular occurrence. I told myself it was just the pressure of her career. She was ambitious, and I admired that about her. But deep down, I couldn't ignore the feeling that something wasn't right. Our moments together, the ones that used to feel full of warmth, were now often filled with awkward silences. The conversations that once flowed effortlessly now felt forced, like we were talking around each other instead of to each other. I thought I was imagining it, or perhaps it was just the weight of life pressing on her. I didn't want to believe anything else, because I didn't want to face the possibility that the life I thought I had could be ripped away in an instant. It wasn't just the late nights. It was the little things that began to change. The way she looked at her phone, the messages she quickly hid when I walked into the room, the excuses about going out with friends that never seemed to add up. I tried to convince myself that I was being paranoid, that I was just overthinking things. After all, she had never given me any reason to doubt her before. But still, the doubts crept in like an itch I couldn't scratch. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, and the more I ignored it, the more it seemed to grow. Then came the day that everything changed, the day I stumbled upon the truth I never wanted to find. It hit me like a ton of bricks, and nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to uncover. My wife, the woman I had trusted with everything, had been hiding a secret that would shatter everything I believed about our marriage. The betrayal wasn't just with anyone. It was with my own brother. The shock of that revelation hit me harder than anything else. I couldn't comprehend it at first. My mind raced, trying to process the overwhelming flood of emotions. The anger, the disbelief, the pain. How could she do this to me? How could my own flesh and blood betray me in such a way? The more I learned, the clearer it became. What had seemed like harmless moments of distance, of late-night work meetings, were actually part of something much darker. A secret affair, hidden in plain sight, one that I never saw coming. The world I had known, the one I had thought was built on trust and love, crumbled in an instant. I felt a rush of anger, a deep, gut-wrenching betrayal that went beyond anything I had ever imagined. How could she do this? How could he, my own brother, be the one to stab me in the back? Everything felt like a lie, and it was impossible to go back. What I once thought was unbreakable, our bond, our marriage, had shattered into 1,000 pieces. As weeks passed, the distance between us became more apparent. It was subtle at first, an offhand comment here, a lingering absence there, but it grew. She started pulling away emotionally, even when we were physically together. I couldn't put my finger on it, but something felt different. Her touch no longer felt like it used to. Her eyes seemed distant, as though she was no longer really there with me. There were times when she'd zone out during our conversations, lost in thought, and I would find myself wondering if she was imagining a life without me. It was a painful thought, but one that crossed my mind more often than I'd like to admit. Still, I tried to brush it off, convincing myself that it was just stress. Work was tough, family drama, health concerns. There was always an excuse, always a reason. I told myself that things would get better once the pressure passed. But deep inside, I felt a growing unease that I couldn't shake. Then there was my brother, a man I had always looked up to, someone I trusted with everything, the person who was supposed to have my back. But even he started acting strange around me. At first, I didn't notice it. It was easy to dismiss. After all, everyone has their own life, their own problems. But after a while, I couldn't ignore it anymore. He became more withdrawn, avoiding my company whenever possible, always making excuses not to come over when my wife was around. Our conversations, once so easy, became stiff and awkward. He'd seem distracted, always looking for ways to leave earlier than usual, or just sitting in silence, his eyes darting around the room, never meeting mine for too long. I began to question everything. Was he avoiding me because of something I couldn't see? Was there something going on between them that I didn't understand? At first, I dismissed the idea. I still didn't believe anything sinister was going on. How could I? This was my family, my brother. But deep down, I felt that something was shifting, something I wasn't ready to acknowledge. There were little moments that gnawed at me. Odd glances exchanged between them when they thought I wasn't looking, the way their voices would lower, and the sudden silence when I entered a room. It was nothing overt, just enough to make me uneasy, but I shoved it all aside. I didn't want to believe that the two people I loved most could betray me in such a way. It wasn't until one evening, when I came home early from work, that everything began to unravel. The moment I walked through the door, I could feel it. The thick tension in the air, something that had been building for weeks but was now impossible to ignore. She was sitting on the couch and my brother was there, too, his presence strange and out of place. They both looked up at me with eyes that didn't quite meet mine, like they were caught in the middle of something they didn't want me to see. My heart began to race, and in that instant, a wave of dread washed over me. I had no proof, no solid reason to be suspicious, but I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. I opened my mouth to say something, but the words caught in my throat. I didn't know what I was expecting, but I could sense that this moment was pivotal. This was the point where everything I had believed, everything I thought I knew, was about to be shattered. It was in that moment that I finally understood. The discomfort, the avoidance, the coldness, everything started to click into place. Something wasn't right, and as much as I wanted to ignore it, the truth was beginning to reveal itself. Then, one night, after a long, exhausting day at work, I came home earlier than usual. I didn't expect anything to be out of the ordinary, just the usual routine. But when I walked through that door, I was met with a sight that froze me in my tracks. There, in the middle of our living room, was my wife, laughing and smiling like I had never seen her before, her arms wrapped around my brother. The warmth in her smile wasn't for me. No, it was for him. A chill ran down my spine. Couldn't move, couldn't speak. I stood there, a silent observer of the scene unfolding in front of me, as if I had just stumbled into some sickening nightmare. The world around me seemed to collapse, the ground beneath my feet disappearing. I felt like I was drowning, unable to breathe as the weight of the moment crushed me. I couldn't comprehend what I was seeing. My mind was racing, trying to process the impossible. How could this be happening? How had I missed it for so long? The laughter, the closeness. It was all so effortless, so natural. They didn't even notice me at first, too caught up in their own little world. But the moment they did, everything stopped. Time seemed to freeze. Their faces shifted from joy to panic in an instant. My brother jumped up, stumbling over his words as he fumbled for an explanation. My wife, too, was suddenly on edge, her eyes wide with guilt, her smile replaced with an awkward tension. I didn't need any more words. I didn't need an explanation. The truth was right there, staring me in the face. In that instant, everything I had believed in, the love, the trust, the life we had built, shattered. It didn't matter what they said next, because in that moment, I knew the truth. I didn't need any more proof. The betrayal, the hurt, the devastation. Everything hit me all at once. The woman I had loved and trusted with my entire heart, the woman I had built a life with, had been hiding this from me all along. And my brother, the person I had trusted the most in this world, was right there with her. My legs felt weak, my chest tight, as the full weight of the situation sank in. I didn't know what to do next. My mind raced, spinning in circles, but there was only one undeniable truth. My world was crumbling, and I was powerless to stop it. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but nothing came out. The pain in my chest was suffocating, more than I could bear. Every part of me wanted to lash out, but I couldn't. I was frozen, trapped in a nightmare I couldn't escape from. I took a step back, my heart pounding in my ears. My mind felt like it was going to explode. I was seeing two people I loved more than anything, two people I had trusted without question, ripping apart everything I had built. I didn't know who I was more furious with, her or him. How had they done this? How had they been able to lie to me, to betray me in such a gut-wrenching way? All I could do was turn away. I couldn't bear to stay there, to hear their excuses or their apologies. I couldn't stand being in the same room as them, not when everything felt so completely destroyed. As I walked out of that room, my mind went numb. The house, once a place of warmth and love, now felt cold and foreign. I didn't know what to do next. My world had shattered, and all I could do was try to hold on to whatever pieces I could still find. As I stood there, frozen in shock, the reality of what I had just witnessed began to sink in. I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes, the rage building inside me. But it wasn't just the betrayal that hurt. It was the loss of everything I had ever believed in. How could she, how could he? The betrayal was beyond anything I had imagined. My wife, my brother, the two people who were supposed to be my pillars, had torn my life apart in one devastating moment. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to demand answers, but I was paralyzed. How do you confront something like this? How do you face the people who were supposed to love you, to trust you, when they've shattered everything with a single, unforgivable act? The anger inside me was overwhelming, yet I felt strangely empty at the same time. How had I missed the signs? How could I have been so blind to what was happening under my roof, with the people I trusted most in the world? Everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and family had been turned on its head. My mind kept replaying the scene over and over, trying to make sense of what I had just seen, but no matter how hard I tried, the pieces wouldn't fit. The woman I had promised my life to, the man who had been my best friend, had become strangers to me in the span of seconds. And in that moment, I realized how much further this betrayal went. This wasn't just about the affair. It was about the shattered trust, the broken bond between us all. It was about the crushing loneliness that followed, knowing that my own family had turned their backs on me. The pain wasn't just the affair. It was the devastating realization that the people I had trusted the most were now the ones who had hurt me the deepest. The foundation of my world had been ripped out from under me, leaving me to fall into a chasm of uncertainty and heartbreak. I felt unmoored, lost in a sea of emotions I couldn't control. My world wasn't just broken, it was gone. The love, the loyalty, the security I had built my life on had vanished in an instant. The future we had planned, the family I had thought was unbreakable, had been shattered irreparably. The life I had worked so hard to build, the life I thought was real, now seemed like a cruel illusion. And as I stood there, alone in the ruins of what had once been everything to me, I realized that there would be no going back. No reconciliation, no fixing this. The betrayal was too deep, the damage too severe. And no matter how much I wanted to pretend it didn't happen, the truth was inescapable. My family, my whole life had turned into a lie, The weight of betrayal was a constant presence, heavy on my chest. My brother and my wife, two people I had trusted above all others, had crossed a line I couldn't fathom. The phone became my weapon, but it wasn't enough. It was only when I overheard a conversation between them that things began to unravel. One evening, I caught them whispering, their voices low, but I could hear the edge of familiarity in their tone. They didn't know I was there, lurking in the shadows, listening. The words they exchanged made my blood run cold. My brother's laughter, my wife's soft responses, it was as though I wasn't even a part of their world anymore. The realization hit me like a slap. They didn't just cross a line, they were in it together. I felt a sickening twist in my stomach, knowing that this betrayal was not just about one moment, but an ongoing deception. My trust had been shattered beyond repair, and the truth was out there, waiting for me to confront it. But where did that leave me? How was I supposed to face the people I loved, knowing they had betrayed me so thoroughly? There was no going back, no pretending it didn't happen. I had to confront them. That night, I sat in silence, staring at my phone, my mind reeling. I could hear the steady thud of my heart as I made the decision. I had to confront them both, my wife and my brother. The time for questioning was over. The time for answers was now. But I knew that the confrontation would change everything. And I wasn't sure if I was ready for what would come next. The weight of the truth pressed down on me, suffocating every ounce of denial I had left. I could no longer ignore the glaring reality. My wife and my brother had been living a lie, and I had been blind to it for far too long. Every text, every call, every secret moment they shared, it all added up. The truth was undeniable now. I scrolled through the messages again, each word searing my mind like a hot iron. The way she spoke to him, the affection in her words, the way they planned to meet behind my back. It all seemed so deliberate, so calculated. And my brother, the one person I had trusted above all else, was playing along, feeding into the deception. I felt sick to my stomach, a mixture of rage, betrayal, and heartache threatening to drown me. How could they do this to me? How could they betray me in such a cold, calculated way? But even as the anger boiled inside me, there was a part of me that wanted to confront them, to make them explain themselves, to hear the lies fall from their mouths. I didn't know what I would do when I saw their faces, but I couldn't keep this inside any longer. I had to confront them. I needed answers. And so, with trembling hands and a heart full of pain, I set the plan in motion. The confrontation was coming, and I wasn't sure how I would handle it, but I knew one thing. Nothing would ever be the same again. But what choice did I have? The suffocating anxiety gnawed at me, clawing away at any sense of peace I had left. Every moment with them felt like an unbearable lie, like I was living in a world that wasn't mine. I couldn't ignore the signs any longer. The way my brother avoided me, the way my wife acted so differently around him. Their chemistry, the way they'd laugh and whisper when they thought I wasn't paying attention, it was all so painfully obvious. But the hardest part was confronting my own feelings. How had I allowed myself to be so oblivious? I had trusted my brother with everything, and to think that he had been deceiving me all this time, that he was the one helping her betray me, was too much to process. My wife, how could she do this? We had built a life together, shared memories, plans, hopes. How had she so easily thrown it all away? I couldn't understand it, and the more I thought about it, the harder it became to breathe. I kept replaying the moments in my mind, trying to piece together everything I had missed. I was desperate to find an explanation, a reason that made sense of the madness. But no matter how many times I searched for answers, they just weren't there. The truth was stark and undeniable, and it consumed me. I couldn't keep living like this, constantly questioning, constantly watching them, wondering if I was losing my mind. Something had to give. It was time for a confrontation. I didn't know what I would say or how they would react, but I couldn't live in this limbo any longer. I had to face them. I had to know the truth even if it destroyed me. So I made the decision. I would confront them together. No more secrets, no more lies. It was time to break the silence and face the betrayal head-on. The thought of what I was about to do terrified me, but I couldn't escape it. I had to know. I had to have closure, no matter what the cost. The emptiness that followed was consuming. I felt like I was drifting through my days, unable to grasp onto anything solid. Every moment, every memory with them, felt tainted. The trust one had built over the years with both my wife and my brother was shattered, and with it, everything I had once believed in. The weight of their betrayal was so heavy that it clouded my every thought. I could no longer look at them without feeling that raw sting of betrayal deep inside. Every time my wife spoke, all I could hear were the lies she had told me. Every time my brother laughed, I saw the image of him whispering to her in secrecy. It felt like I was living in an alternate reality, one where the people closest to me weren't who I thought they were. And the worst part? I didn't know how to confront them. I didn't know if I had the strength to face the truth head-on. What could I even say to them? What would I do when I looked into their eyes and saw the guilt, the regret, or worse, the indifference? Part of me wanted to scream, to demand answers, but another part of me feared what would happen when I finally confronted them. Would they own up to what they had done? Or would they continue to lie to cover up the truth? I couldn't escape the thought that everything I knew, everything I had trusted, had been a lie, and I was left standing in the wreckage, unsure of what was real anymore. The pain was so overwhelming that it felt like my world had been reduced to rubble. There was no going back. I could never undo what had happened. But the question remained, what would I do now? How could I move forward from this, knowing the truth about the people I loved? How could I rebuild when everything had been destroyed? The day I had been dreading, the day I had spent weeks preparing for, had finally arrived. Every nerve in my body was on edge, knowing that this moment would either bring relief or shatter me entirely. I had spent countless days in the shadows, watching their every move, waiting for the right time to confront them both. I had been gathering pieces of the puzzle, hoping that this final piece would give me the clarity I needed. And now it was all coming to a head. My brother had invited my wife to his place that night, and I couldn't ignore the sinking feeling that something was about to happen. I had no proof, no definitive evidence, but my instincts told me everything I needed to know. The way they acted around each other, the late-night messages, the glances that lingered just a little too long. Something was off, and I was determined to find out what. I had been planning this night for weeks, making sure everything was set up perfectly. I had to know the truth, no matter how much it would hurt. Felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders. Every thought, every decision I had made leading up to this moment felt like it was building to one inevitable conclusion. My hands were cold with anxiety, but I couldn't back out now. As the night descended, I made sure they believed I was out of the house, that I had other plans, that I was nowhere near them. I kept my distance, pretending to be busy with other things, but I was hyper-aware of every sound around me. My mind raced with the possibilities of what I would find, but I had to remain calm. My heart beat wildly in my chest as I carefully stepped out into the darkness, a silent observer of the night's unfolding events. I followed them from a distance, my steps deliberate and quiet, like a predator stalking its prey. Every movement, every sound, felt amplified as I made my way closer to the house. My thoughts were a whirlpool of confusion, betrayal, and dread. What if I was wrong? What if I was reading too much into their actions? But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was the moment when everything would be exposed. The closer I got, the more intense the anticipation became. My chest tightened with each step. This wasn't just about proving a suspicion. It was about confronting the truth, about finally uncovering what had been hidden from me for so long. I couldn't turn back now. The truth was right in front of me, and it was time to face it. I finally reached their destination. My body froze, every muscle tensed, waiting for the inevitable. I knew that whatever happened next would change everything. There was no going back. I couldn't wait any longer. The truth had to come out, no matter how much it hurt. I stood outside my brother's apartment, my heart pounding in my chest, every beat deafening in my ears. Adrenaline coursed through my veins, pushing me to take action, but my legs felt like lead, frozen in place by a mix of fear and anticipation. I could hear the sound of laughter drifting faintly from the other room, the sound that made my stomach twist into tight, nauseating knots. The laughter was too casual, too easy. It was a sound that shouldn't have been coming from my wife, not like this, not here. My mind was racing, spinning with 1,000 thoughts, but there was one that kept repeating over and over. This is it, they were together and I knew it. The evidence, the feelings, everything pointed to this exact moment. The overwhelming truth was sinking in, and my body trembled with the weight of it. It was too much, too real, too painful to face. Every part of me screamed to turn around, to flee, to avoid the inevitable heartache that would come from seeing it with my own eyes. But I couldn't. I couldn't walk away now, not after everything I had endured to get to this point. I needed to know. I needed to confront the truth, no matter how it would destroy me. My hands were shaking, my breath shallow, but I took a step forward, determined to finish this. With a deep, shaky breath, I mustered every ounce of courage and pushed the door open slowly, trying to make as little noise as possible. My heart thudded painfully against my ribs as I stepped into the dimly lit apartment. The silence between the laughter felt heavy, suffocating. The world around me seemed to slow down as I moved into the room, every second stretching longer than the last. The weight of the moment was crushing, but there was no turning back. And then I saw it. It was everything I feared and more. My wife, the woman I had trusted with my heart, was sitting so close to my brother that their bodies were practically one. Her head was resting on his shoulder, the two of them intertwined in a way that made my blood run cold. The sight of them together, so effortlessly intimate, hit me like a freight train. The softness of her touch, the look in their eyes, it was all wrong. It was a private moment, a moment that should have belonged to me and her. But instead, it was shared between them, right in front of me. I couldn't tear my eyes away, even as the shock and disbelief coursed through my body. I felt frozen in time, my world spinning out of control. This was the betrayal I had been afraid of, the one I had felt deep in my gut but had never truly wanted to acknowledge. The truth was undeniable. The weight of it crashed over me like a ton of bricks, each piece of the revelation settling heavily in my chest. There was no more pretending, no more wondering if I was overthinking things or being paranoid. This was real. This was the truth, staring me in the face, and I had no choice but to accept it. My breath hitched as the pain surged through me, sharp and unrelenting. I had been blind, I had trusted them both, and now that trust was shattered beyond repair. For a moment, I stood there, struggling to find my voice, but all I could hear was the pounding in my ears, drowning out everything else. Everything I thought I knew, everything I believed, was crumbling in an instant. The truth was right in front of me, and it was more than I could bear. I stood frozen in the doorway, my mind spinning, 1,000 thoughts colliding at once. I couldn't find my voice. I couldn't process what I had just witnessed. The scene before me was so much worse than I ever imagined, so much more devastating than I could have ever prepared myself for. Anger, confusion, hurt. Everything surged up inside me all at once, like a tidal wave ready to crush me beneath its weight. My stomach twisted, my chest tightened, but no words came. I was paralyzed, caught in the moment, unable to react, unable to do anything but stare. I wanted to scream, to rage, to throw everything in my path and demand an explanation. But the words wouldn't come. They were locked in my throat, as if my body was unwilling to give voice to the horror of what I had just uncovered. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the rapid thumping of my heart in my chest. For a split second, time seemed to freeze. It felt like the world had stopped spinning, leaving me suspended in an endless moment of disbelief. They both looked up at me, their expressions quickly shifting from shock to something much worse. The color drained from their faces as they realized that I had caught them, that I knew. The weight of their guilt was palpable in the air between us, thick with tension and the unbearable silence of a moment that could never be undone. My mind was racing, but I couldn't process anything fast enough. How could I wrap my head around what I was seeing? In that instant, everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and family came crashing down. The foundation of trust one had built with both of them, the people I had believed in most, was now shattered, reduced to dust at my feet. The betrayal was so complete, so absolute, that I couldn't even fathom where to begin or what to feel. It was as if the ground beneath me had been ripped away, leaving me to fall, to drift, to drown in this suffocating, painful realization. And then the chaos erupted. My brother was the first to react, stumbling to his feet, his face a mix of fear and panic. His movements were clumsy, like he was trying to come up with some excuse, some lie, but the words wouldn't come. He just stood there, looking at me like a deer caught in headlights, unable to face the truth he had been hiding. My wife's expression shifted too. Gone was the shock, replaced by something far worse. Guilt. The look in her eyes, the way she avoided mine, told me everything I needed to know. She knew. She knew this would break me. Accusations flew from my mouth, sharp and bitter. Before I could even stop myself, I felt the heat of anger rise in my chest, making my words cut deeper than I intended. But I didn't care. Couldn't care. The hurt I was feeling, the sense of betrayal, had to be voiced, even if it came out all wrong. My hands clenched into fists at my sides as tears welled up in my eyes, blurring my vision, but I didn't let them fall. Not yet. Everything felt like a blur, a whirlwind of emotion, of questions, of shattered trust. The words that came next were a blur, but the weight of them lingered in the air, hanging over us like a dark cloud. How could this be happening? How could my brother, the person I had trusted as family, the person who I thought I could rely on no matter what, betray me like this? How could my wife, the woman I had given my heart to, the woman I thought was mine, do this to me? It was all surreal, like I was watching a nightmare unfold, a nightmare that I couldn't escape, no matter how badly I wanted to. I couldn't understand it. I couldn't reconcile the people I thought I knew with the actions they had just taken. It was like I was standing outside of myself, watching my world unravel, unable to do anything to stop it. Everything I had built with them, every moment I had shared, every promise of loyalty and trust, was crumbling before my eyes. My mind was a whirlwind of disbelief and pain. It was a betrayal so deep, so brutal, that I didn't know how to begin picking up the pieces. Everything I had believed in, about love, about family, about the people I trusted most, had been ripped away, leaving me standing alone in the wreckage. And there was no way to put it all back together. Not anymore. The days after that confrontation felt like a blur, each moment dragging me further into a storm of disbelief and heartbreak. My wife and I separated instantly, but it wasn't just her betrayal that shattered me. It was my brother, too. The sting of his betrayal cut deeper than I ever imagined. The very person I trusted most had turned against me in the worst way possible. Couldn't wrap my mind around it. Our family was now divided, with everyone taking sides. The worst part? They sided with my wife and brother, telling me I was overreacting, that I needed to forgive and forget. Felt like a slap to my face. The people who should have been my support system turned their backs on me, and I was left standing in the ruins of my life, completely alone. But as I stood there, crushed by the weight of it all, I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't let this betrayal slip by unnoticed. I had to find a way to rise from the ashes, to rebuild my life after it had been shattered into a million pieces. No matter how much it hurt, I couldn't just let them win. I had to fight for myself, for my own healing. The aftermath was a nightmare I hadn't anticipated. There were no silver linings, no happy endings, just one long, painful road ahead. I filed for divorce, cutting all ties with my wife, but that was just the beginning of my pain. I severed my relationship with my brother, a decision I never thought I'd have to make, but it was necessary. As for my family, they turned their backs on me without a second thought. They chose to stand with them, leaving me with nothing but the weight of their judgment. It was a lonely path, and every step felt heavier than the last. But through the darkness, I began to rebuild. Slowly, piece by piece. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when I felt like giving up, but I knew I had to be strong for myself. I poured myself into work, took up new projects, and little by little, I began to find healing in the most unexpected places. Time did its work, and slowly I found closure. Not from anyone else, but from within. I came to realize that sometimes the people you love the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. That lesson was the hardest of all, but it was the one that taught me the most about strength, resilience, and the power of moving forward, no matter how much the past tried to hold me back. Comment down if you've ever been betrayed, you know the pain. Subscribe for more shocking stories and join me as we dive deeper into the truth behind the lies.